This is a new ad from the Biden campaign. Please listen up.
The 2020 economic crash. We've been through this before. Then Vice President Joe Biden oversaw the 2009 American Recovery Act. 14 million jobs created. The auto industry rescued. The longest sustained job growth in American history. With 6 million kept out of poverty and less than 1% waste. He's done it before. He'll do it again.
That's a very sort of standard. It's almost like an ad, like a Ronald Reagan second term running ad, right? And now let me play the hardcore. That's you guys' ad, the Lincoln Project ad.
We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, as they slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
Those who are lost now, their legacy must be our lives.
Amazing grace.
I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers. We dominate the streets.
I won't traffic in fear and division. I won't fan the flames of hate.
It's time to pick up our heads. Remember who we are. This is the United States of America.
Like, gets your heart rate going. Adam Serwer wrote in The Atlantic that it's hard for Donald Trump to run against another white guy. It's becoming clear that after 12 years of feasting on white identity politics with a black man and a woman as its preeminent villains, the Republican Party is struggling to run its Obama-era culture war playbook against an old, moderate white guy. With you guys running ads like that, and Biden sort of almost coming across like sort of a cross-partisan president, what could Trump even do against that?
Well, I think you touched on it early on. This is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump, right? And normally an incumbent will get about 1 point, maybe above whatever his job approval number is. And Trump's job approval number is now somewhere between 38 and 41. So that's kind of where he's stuck. And he's got about a 50 very hard negative. So he's in this box canyon that he can't really get out of. The other thing about Joe Biden is that people see him as a stable leader. And in our ad that we just showed, people are yearning to go back to presidents that knew how to conduct themselves in a moment of crisis, right? And right now, they wake up every day and it's insane Groundhog Day, every day with this president. They want to get back to just a bit of normalcy. No family, no business, small or large, no sports team, no anything could be conducted this way, where every day is based on the mood of the person at the top, or whether he's tweeting, attacking someone,
Chaos.
or whether his ego needs to be massaged. I mean, people really are tired of all of it.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden could literally run on the tagline, "Wouldn't you like to sleep at night?" That would be all he needed to do. That would be it. Thank you very much, John Weaver. It's great to talk with you. And you guys, those ads are great. All right, and coming up, a Blockbuster report says Russia paid, this is actually a huge and a very important story, that Russia paid militants, think about this, to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan. And Donald Trump, what has he done about it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Those details are straight ahead.
I pray to God that justice will be served pertaining to all our men and women here in America that has suffered immensely and has paid the ultimate sacrifice for people such as you and I having what we have today. It's appalling to think that somebody would give a green light for another country to come in and mutilate our own military. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what went on with the Ukrainian people towards turning their backs on them openly, and Congress saying, yeah, he he committed an offense, but it wasn't an impeachable offense. Congress said it wasn't an impeachable offense. So in America's bylaws, and what we stand for as an open, free, fair democracy, where is the line whenever somebody crosses that line, especially at the expense of our own, at the expense of American soldiers' lives being taken? Where is that impeachable offense towards a president no longer being worthy or actually looked upon as being a traitor to his own people? Where is that invisible line in the sand to say enough is enough? Enough is enough. Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. Whenever you're the president of the free world, there's a lot required unto you to have to do for the fairness of all. And Donald Trump has not been meeting up to those standards. Black Lives Matter, Mr. President. Our military veterans' lives matter, Mr. President. Our allies who have sworn of the same form of democracy, their lives matter, Mr. President. Why is that so hard for this guy to wrap his tiny little finite mind around, to understand that you can be looked upon
concluded that a Russian military
as actually being a traitor? Please listen to this story.
Stunning reminder last night that when it comes to Donald Trump, all roads lead to Russia. The New York Times reports that, quote, American intelligence officials have concluded that a Russian military intelligence unit secretly offered bounties to Taliban-linked militants for killing coalition forces in Afghanistan, including targeting American troops amid the peace talks to end the long-running war there, according to officials briefed on the matter. The Times reports that officials believe some of those bounties have actually been collected, and that Donald Trump was briefed back in March, but so far has not done a thing, essentially letting the Kremlin walk for killing our troops. So we ask again, what is it with Donald Trump ceding fidelity to Russia over America? Joining me now is one of the writers of that article, Charlie Savage, Washington correspondent for the New York Times, and the author of Power Wars, The Relentless Rise of Presidential Authority and Secrecy. Let me read another excerpt from your piece. Thank you for being here, Charlie. It says here, Islamic militants, you're right, Islamic militants or armed criminal elements closely associated with them are believed to have collected some bounty money, the official said. 20 Americans were killed in combat in Afghanistan in 2019, but it was not clear which killings were under suspicion. So the Trump administration finds this out in March. Has Donald Trump had any contact with Vladimir Putin since then that we know of? Has he had any contact with the Kremlin since then that we know of?
That's a good question. I think that they did have a call at some point, but I would want to double check that before anyone takes it to the bank. And I would also like to say that the meeting we described was in late March, but this intelligence actually surfaced earlier in the year than that. And it took them a while to have an interagency meeting at the NSC at all. This whole response to this apparently solid, at least believed to be solid within the U.S. government, intelligence finding has been strangely lethargic. It took them a while to have a meeting, and they've just been kind of spinning their wheels since then about what, if anything, to do about it.
So meaning that Trump may have known about this while he was being impeached. Is that the implication?
So we know that this intelligence surfaced earlier this year, earlier than late March, than that meeting, and was briefed to Trump at some point in his daily briefing. It was been going on. Obviously, you're right. There was the impeachment going on, and then that kind of merged into the crisis of the pandemic. And so there's been a lot of distraction to happen. At the same time, though, the U.S. government is full of lots of people, and they had this menu of options drawn up for them, which started with send a diplomat to his counterpart in Moscow to say, hey, we know you're doing this and knock it off at a minimum. And then an escalating series of response options were also drawn up with that, which included things like sanctions. But none of them have been authorized, not even, as we understand it, a diplomatic protest.
And I'm told by my expert producers here that Donald Trump did have a call on June 1st with Vladimir Putin to talk about the G7, in which apparently he would like to make that again the G8. He'd like to invite Vladimir Putin to come back into the G7. That doesn't seem to have changed due to this intelligence. Do we know whether or not the Senate Intelligence Committee or House Intelligence Committee had this information as well, or had access to it?
We think that this was extraordinarily closely held until this week. Even though British soldiers were also among those being targeted, we don't think Britain was told until this week. There's been only in the last few days a relaxation of the tight controls on this information. We have not heard anything. We've only gotten a no comment in response to our inquiries to the intelligence committees. So when they were told and whether it was earlier than this week or even whether they learned it from us is not clear.
Right. This is extraordinary information. This is great reporting. Charlie Savage, thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking some time on this taking some time on this with us this morning. Thank you. And we're going to do a lot more on this for our audience tomorrow. We're going to talk more about this. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And coming up, Mike Pence did not misspeak. He didn't make a mistake. He didn't tell a mistruth. This man just flat out lied about a pandemic that has killed more than 125,000 Americans. That's next.
Kelsey loves how essential oils help her chill. And now
it's really sad whenever we have people that can't tell the truth based around being too relaxed because they look at numbers towards statistics versus human lives, and it's really sad whenever they play off on us the way that they do, because the risks outweigh the rewards. It's really sad. But that's what they do until there's something, like a 6 or 8% decline of the workforce. They feel like that the risks outweighs the rewards. Let me repeat that. The rewards outweigh the risk, and because of it, they go ahead and take the risk. It's really sad in the society that we live in here in America towards how they try to validate their own moves. It's really, really sad.
she has those.
Let's move this forward here just a little bit, where we can get right to the program.
Rambling to reverse.
That's probably it right there. Right there. Right there.
And I think that people just don't want to recognize it because you got a lot of people in your profession who wax poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened.
Multiple state governors who chose to be obedient to Donald Trump about coronavirus rather than to the science are now scrambling to reverse course. Take Florida, which had its record highest day of new cases on Friday. Nearly 9,000 cases reported in just 24 hours. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis lagged behind other states in imposing lockdown measures and was one of the first to begin reopening. But it's not just Florida. 4 other states hit new records on Friday: Georgia, Idaho, Tennessee, and Utah. And big states like Texas and California have seen a troubling rise in cases despite very different leadership styles in those states. The country overall also hit a new record with more than 40,000 cases reported on Friday alone. 11 states are now pausing or flat out reversing their plans to reopen. And joining me now is Dr. Howard Koh, former Assistant Secretary for Health in the Obama administration, Nikki Fried, Florida Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and Democratic pollster Fernanda Mondi, host of the podcast Strange Days. Thank you all for being here. Dr. Koh, let me go to you first. What explains this sudden spike in states like Florida and Texas and even California?
Well, Joy, we're very disturbed to see 5 months into this pandemic, these record-breaking trends. We should be on the other side of the pandemic right now, but instead in places like Florida, we see numbers that are 500% higher than Memorial Day. Positivity rates, they have tripled. And in short, the reopening strategy in places like Florida have not worked. Everybody wants to solve the economic crisis, but the only way to get there is to solve the health crisis first. And so we know what we have to do. We have to double down on prevention. We have to double down on public health. For wearing masks, for example, people should be wearing masks, not just for themselves, but for those who they are with, their family members, people they love and care about. That's the way everybody can make a contribution to public health. And these issues have to be resolved now before the fall comes and we face a possible second wave and the flu season coming on as a threat as well.
Yeah, I think the idea that warm weather was going to solve it is obviously not true, because we're in warm weather and look what's happening. Commissioner Fried, I want to let you critique your governor's performance, because he was very bold. You saw that ad at the top in which he's boasting that everything is going to be fine. Don't say that we're going to be like New York. Well, here we are now, 122,960 confirmed cases in Florida, 3,366 deaths. Florida counties fighting coronavirus surge now by closing beaches, mailing out masks. You see a lot of closings now in South Florida. And then there's a chart showing the trajectory of Florida cases from March until June till June 26th. And it's just up, 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 up. What is the governor, critique the governor's performance for us, if you might.
Yeah, so I was critical of the governor from day one. I called on the stay-at-home order 3 weeks before he actually put it into place. And it was actually hopeful. He put out a very methodical, data-driven policy on reopening. But unfortunately, that's not what happened here in the States. It was very arbitrary on opening up bars, capacity for restaurants, gyms, fitness centers. And so what happened is that we let down our guard. When we saw the governor and the president, their heads in the sand, people just thought that the mission was accomplished, and they let down their security guard. And so now we're seeing these huge spikes throughout the entire state. And really, the governor's leadership has been emptier than really President Trump's rally in Tulsa. And so what we need to be doing now is taking these measured approaches. I called on a statewide mask ordinance, which the governor has refused to do. So our local governments are having to step up to the plate. There was no enforcement even when we were opening up businesses. So businesses were going to 100% capacity. And again, everybody thought this was behind us. So people really weren't taking responsibility on their own. Businesses were not following the regulations. And the governor was moving on and putting his head back into the sand, thinking, let's hide the ball and look at something else and forget that COVID ever existed.
Well, and Fernand, Ron DeSantis, as always, was following the lead of the Trump administration. He does whatever they say, whatever they do. And I want to let you listen to Mike Pence, who the coronavirus task force finally reemerged with Mike Pence as the lead. And here he was talking about how well he thinks that they have done.
Though, like you're saying, do as we say, not as we do. You're telling people to listen to local officials, but in Tulsa you defied local health officials to have an event that, even though you say it didn't result in a spike, dozens of Secret Service agents, dozens of campaign staffers are now quarantined after positive tests. And then in Arizona, one of the hardest hit states, you packed a church with young people who weren't wearing masks. So how can you say that the campaign is not part of the problem that Dr. Fauci laid out?
Well, I want to remind you again that the freedom of speech and the right to peaceably assemble is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. And even in a health crisis, the American people don't forfeit our constitutional rights.
For Don, with that kind of leadership, and Governor DeSantis in lockstep with that, are you surprised that Florida is where Florida is?
Not at all, Joy. By the time this is all said and done, Governor Ron DeSantis is going to have to change his name to Governor Ron Disastrous, because it's been disastrous, lethal mismanagement, as Commissioner Freed and Dr. Koh alluded to. The problem, Joy, is that this is a problem that is not just limited to Florida. There is a pattern here, and it seems to be that every state that is led by Republican governors, whether it's here in Florida under Governor Disastrous, in Arizona under Governor Ducey, in Texas, Governor Abbott, the other elements I think that is clearly on display here is you have in this Trump Republican Party a party that is clearly incapable of governing, or worse, or has no interest. This is a party that is so that every element of public policy is available for public consumption. This Governor Disastrous, has prevented people from knowing decisions being made. Just yesterday, without any announcement whatsoever, formal indication of steps, they've closed bars. Employees are now going to have to be out of work again. You're looking at the catastrophic closing of businesses because of an unwillingness to admit a mistake, and how this was done about. And as Dr. Koh said earlier, criminal negligence in not calling for a statewide order for publicly wearing masks. It's just a sign of what's to come. And that's why this November, Joy, it's not just democracy that's on the ballot, it's our very lives, given what we've seen over these last 3.5 months.
We're going to leave it right there of the seriousness of all this, because I've known for quite some times now that this is going beyond the realm of normalcy whenever it comes to this pandemic that we're all facing. And if things wasn't handled promptly and professionally, we was going to have serious consequences. Once more, just as the individual just got through talking, we're not just talking about the life or the death of a free, fair, open democracy, but we're talking about actual life and death situations whenever we have leadership on the top that obviously don't know what the right hand is doing from the left hand, to the point that if the blind lead the blind according to the book of life, they both shall leadeth off into the ditch. We as the society here in America and throughout the world are tired of being led into this dark hole. We are tired of being led into a cave. We are tired of being led into a life of distress. We are tired of being led into a bunch of lies. We are tired of the 1%ers continually grasping and prospering over the 99%ers, to the point that they don't even recognize that Black Lives Matter. We're tired of the injustice that's happening, not just here in America, but throughout the world. So please, those who get a hold of this message, please realize that the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19, does not discriminate towards where it goes and who it affects. Thank you for listening, and good luck to all of us. And shalom to my viewers.